Here's a good story of when you think you can create something and it goes somewhere completely different. So a prison in the south of England got in touch, and we had some chats for some time, and then we put on a 2-day event for them so that they could come and really do their due diligence, you know, look at what's going on and how it works and all of that. And so they sat in on a staff training, they sat in on some meetings, and we ran a focus group of some of the men that had been through the programmes. And I chose 8 men for the focus group, and I chose them for their varying degrees of understanding. So some people who really, you know, really sort of grounded in the understanding and coming from that place, and been working with me for 10 months, because I also run a practitioner course within the prison. So I've got 2 of the guys in prison that are learning to be practitioners. We did have 6, but the other 4 got out, so it was working so well. Within minutes, just sat back in my chair. Like, the stuff that's coming out of these guys' mouth, I couldn't have written. You know, they were just so wise and clever and knowledgeable, and they knew what would make the system better, and they knew what they needed to do. And the team that were there were asking them all these questions: what about this, and what about that, and what about this? And they answered everything beautifully. How many other programs have you done? And they were reeling off these programs I've never even heard of. And I had to literally bite my cheeks, because I knew that the people in there were, you know, they weren't on board. They weren't feeling the love, right? So I had to stop myself from crying, but I could have cried so many times in that session. And what happened was, a week before, I had a thought: why don't you invite the commissioner to the session? He might not come, but, you know, give him the invite. And I get on really well with the commissioner. So I sent him an invite, and that morning he turned up and he sat in the group. So the group ends, and I took them to another meeting, and this delegation from this other prison, they weren't impressed and they didn't like it, and they said that I hadn't introduced them to the men that had failed, which was an alien concept to me. I was like, no one fails. But anyway, they weren't happy, so they went off, and no surprise, we didn't win that business. But the commissioner was like, wow. Wow. That evening, I was, you know, quite demoralised. I'd spent 2 days planning this event, trying to be neutral, introducing them to people. I knew they didn't like it. I knew they weren't happy. So I sort of just let myself sit in my misery for the evening. And the next morning, it's like, well, back on the horse. And what came from me that night when I reflected is, it was just before Christmas, it was December time. What a gift. Wow. I wouldn't sit in the room and have a focus group and find out what they thought about the programme. And I got this gift from all these beautiful souls of how it had touched their lives, how they were back in touch with their families, how they were now talking to their children and talking to them in a different way, how they were not being violent, how they were experiencing freedom in prison, how they loved being locked behind their door, because then they could just sit and reflect and read, and they weren't seeing that as being locked up anymore. So there are steps in between all of this, that when you're hearing about success, you don't get to hear about the steps, do you? But long story short, because of that commissioner, who then said, come and do a presentation, because he was so blown away, he went back and he told all his service providers, 30 service providers in Northampton, about this amazing thing that was going on, talking about joined up services. And could you come and do a presentation? We did a presentation, and the service manager of Phoenix Futures, who helped us to get into the prison, has also been deeply impacted himself by the principles. So he came along and helped me. Some of the services are interested in our offering, you know, so they're talking to me now. In fact, one of them is going to be taking that service in a few weeks' time, and they want all their staff trained and all their volunteers trained. So 30 people they want us to train in the understanding, because they were so impacted by that presentation. And then they said, well, we're running this pilot project in 2018, and we already know it's good. You know, it's good. It's a good project. It's about personalised treatment. It's about taking each individual and then helping them with housing and helping them with benefits and helping them with work if that's what they want to do, and so on and so forth. And what we realise is attitude and state of mind is going to be a really big, important part of that. So can we work together with you, and can you help us provide that service? It's a massive project, and could you train 2 people from each of those 30 services in the principles so that the frontline staff know the principles? Amazing, right? What I'm grateful for is even the opportunity to have that conversation. I'm grateful for the opportunity to show the transformation that's possible, to awaken hope and resilience inside a new person that's in front of me. Whatever the outcome, whatever that might look like, I'd love to do that project. I'm on it, right? But it might not work the way I think it's going to work. It might not happen the way I think it's going to happen. But I'm grateful right now, here today, just for the fact that I could sit in that room and talk to the commissioner and his boss about the work that we're doing. And then know that some of my boys will be released by then, and I can get them in. And I'm just grateful for that. And that's what sustains me. So in those times when I get buffeted by my own thinking and I beat myself up about I'm not good enough, or I haven't got marketing, or I haven't got this, or I haven't got that, I just remember that what I'm doing is exactly perfect for what I'm doing right now, and I'm grateful for that.